everybody, my name is Matt Yocum, and today I'm here back with Pro Sound Effects, and today we're going to be doing a tutorial about the approach of sound design for horror movies. Talk about sort of the design process, the approach, how to think about things, and how to maybe, best impact the audience member and to get into their head, as any good horror film should. A couple things I need to mention today to start off. Today I'll be using the Core 2 Standard Library Bundle from Pro Sound Effects, and I'll be sort of, as we go through, you'll hopefully see the benefit of having a great general library to draw source material from. Pro Sound Effects has their core series bundled in different sizes, so whether you're just starting out and you need a smaller collection to sort of get yourself going, or maybe you're a seasoned professional and you're looking to really expand the library that you have access to, Pro Sound Effects sort of covers the range with their library bundles. And these core bundles are great because obviously when you purchase a bundle, it's coming at a better value in a cheaper price than if you were to purchase these all separately on their own. And they're really fantastic value. I really enjoy using them. So be sure to check those out on their website. I have to give another big shout out to Film Supply. The horror clip that we'll be watching today was something that I put together from their library that I found on their website. And they just have an amazing, vast array of clips on there. They're actually the global leaders in cinematic footage licensing, and they have award-winning filmmakers that contribute to their library, such as Stink, Pretty Bird, Anonymous Content, etc. So be sure to check for a link in the description for their content, and thank you to them for allowing us to use their clips to put together this material today. So today we're talking about the horror genre. The horror genre is super fun. It's actually pretty funny. I tell people this story sometimes where basically I never used to be much of a horror fan. I don't enjoy being scared necessarily. It wasn't something that I raced to the theater for. In fact, I pretty much avoided going to the theater to watch horror movies just because I didn't really see the fun in being scared. But ironically, I met my wife when we were in college, and she was a huge horror fanatic, and she used to drag me to all the horror movies, much to my dismay. I ended up falling in love with the genre. I found a lot of fun in it, as a lot of people do. Ironically then, as my career sort of picked up, I ended up working on a ton of horror stuff, and even recently I've been working on a lot of horror stuff, so it seems to follow me around, and it is a lot of fun to design. And I will say it does sort of take the edge off a little bit once you get to peek behind the curtain and see how things are made and put together. It makes it a little bit easier to watch the films, and I kind of know what to look out for now. But they're a lot of fun to design, and we're going to be talking about some of the sort of approaches to the design and the psychology of it. Tension and release is a big thing that we'll be talking about. Then we're going to dive into a ProTools session here with our video. This is actually something I just edited together myself. A lot of these horror movies that I work on, I'm not allowed to actually use the footage. So this is sort of a good, using Film Supply was great because I was able to grab a lot of horror, creepy stock footage and put them together into something it's sort of similar to a horror sequence that we might see in a film. So we'll be looking at the ProTools session. We'll go through and we'll actually approach designing this scene using the Pro Sound Effects Core 2 Standard Bundle, and also using Pro Sound Effects' new software called SoundQ, which is a great library metadata organizational tool that we can use to cut our sounds into our Pro Tools session. So we're going to dive into that next. Okay guys, so we are here in the Pro Tools session that I've set up. I have not done a single thing to this Pro Tools session except for to bring in the video file for the horror video that we're going to edit. This is a short clip, like I said, that I put together. It's about a minute and it's about 35 seconds long actually, so it's not even a minute, but it'll take us a minute to get through and discuss sort of how to approach this. The first thing I always do is I'll just put a start marker, and then I'll tab to the end of the video file, and I'll put an end marker. Personally, I just like the sort of visual of seeing the beginning and end when I'm working down in the tracks. We're not going to be doing any dialogue work today, so I'm going to use just a custom key setup that I've done to inactivate that. I'm going to hide it. We may do some footsteps. We'll see. We'll definitely be doing some backgrounds, and we won't have any music for this scene. So I'm actually going to inactivate that and hide it. And we won't have to worry about guides or AF either. So I'm actually going to hide and inactivate those also. So the first thing I'll do here, I'm going to make the video a little bit larger while we scrub through. And then we're going to do just that. We're going to scrub through this video and just sort of take a look at it. I mean, this is, if I were to receive this footage and have seen it for the first time right now, this is what I'd be doing. So I'm going to scrub through. So we've got this kind of cool, moody shot of this industrial fan here. What looks like the inside of like an abandoned warehouse. Some broken glass. Oh, looks like there's sort of like a quick flash jump cut there to what looks like some blood. So it's creepy, broken glass on the floor. A Dutch angle of this same fan over here. Cut to creepy shot of woman standing in the room that we were just looking at. Glass all over the floor. Some like quick jump cuts. We're up closer on her. It's got a creepy vibe. She's walking. And then this little sequence. So this is only 30 seconds long. Let's just play through this. Industrial fan. Creepy warehouse. Sort of dilapidated. Broken furniture. Glass. Some creepy flash cuts there. Woman. All right, and then some scary flash imagery and the drip of blood at the end there. So the first thing that I like to do when I'm watching a piece of footage like this is obviously to ask myself, okay, what's going on in the scene? What is the director probably trying to tell us? Like, if this were a real spotting session and if I were really doing this, I'd be sitting down with the director. He'd be telling me exactly what he wants, but we'll deduce this all together. So there's sort of these flash cuts. Like, obviously we're seeing like a lot of debris, this creepy place, and then some blood imagery. So, this woman pops up out of nowhere in in this previous shot. She's not there. Now she is. So that's going to be, a moment that we can sting a little bit and give some impact to the fact that she's appeared. The fact that we're seeing this sort of bloody imagery would tell me as the viewer and as the designer that, we don't know as the audience yet. Is she the one who's involved with this blood? Is she a victim? Is she the the perpetrator, I guess we could say? All I see are these sort of quick flashes of blood, and then we get a close-up on her. She's, a lot of contrast because she's backlit. So I'm gonna sort of play this scene as if she's maybe the villain here, right? Like she's the scary subject in our mini horror film that we've got going on. She takes some slow, dramatic steps front, and then we've got some scary imagery here. More blood being poured into whatever this container is. Shot of a woman screaming, some creepy mummy skull guys here, and then this final like dramatic drop of blood, and then we hold on that shot until it's over. So the idea that we're going to go for here is we're going to try to build an arc. Right? So one of the best things that we can do in really any genre, but specifically in horror, is to make sure that our scene has a shape to it and that we utilize the tools of, volume and tone and contrast dynamics, these things to sort of build a shape for our scene that gives us an arc. Because what we don't want to do is just cut every shot for exactly what it is. Because then we'll just wind up with sort of, for lack of a better description, just a boring sound design job. We really want to shape this. You want to sort of think about this almost as if you're a composer. This is often the case in horror films specifically, is a lot of times there's a ton of trade-off between what the composer is doing and what we're doing as sound designers. A lot of times when you watch a film, like, there's no way to really know whether a big stinger or a jump scare or tension tone, creepy stuff, whether that was actually done by the sound designer or the composer. It tends to really run together. And if you are in the fortunate position to find yourself in a collaborative environment where you get to actually talk to the composer, or if your supervisor is having communication with the composer for the film that you're working on, then you'll want to discuss, hey, what do you think your approach is going to be in this scene? You want to discuss what You know, what you'll be doing as the sound designer versus what they're going to be doing as the composer, making sure that your ideas are like homogenous and that, you know, you're leading to a single goal, right? Because if we design, you know, a very specific shape to this scene in terms of tension and release and contrast and what moments it is that we're going to be highlighting, and then the composer has a totally different idea for the shape of the scene, which could very well happen, then you'll wind up with something that doesn't really sound like everybody was working together. It'll sound like two different ideas layered on top of one another. So we have to have that sort of harmony. For the purposes of this scene, we're going to just pretend like we don't have a composer on this, or that this scene was set aside specifically for sound design to take hold of. But just be aware that that collaborative aspect is definitely there for many parts, especially in something like a horror movie where, you know, tone and sort of abstract sound design is really going to be present the entire time. Okay. So let's talk about how the first thing I do is I'm actually just going to quickly go through this, and I'm going to drop markers every time there's a cut. What I'm doing here is I'm just nudging back and forth using the M, less than, greater than, and question mark symbol keys. I've discussed this in videos before, but basically M and the question mark do large nudges back and forth by 6 frames at a time if your nudge is set to 1, which mine is 1 frame. And then the greater than and less than symbols, the left and right arrows, nudge by a single frame. So I usually move through with the larger nudges, and then I will, on specific cuts, I will go back and use the individual ones to move a frame at a time. Now, this is just my approach. You don't have to go through and do this, but this helps me to give myself like a visual roadmap of where things are at with these markers. And I'm just dropping a marker anytime anything new comes up, so including black space, so that we can see the cuts visually on our timeline. And by the way, I'm dropping the markers just by hitting the Enter key, on the numeric side. So probably close enough. I can always go back in there and refine after the fact, but this gives me sort of a roadmap to follow. You know, we're looking at this fan, so I'll probably start by... I think I'm actually going to start by addressing just the BGs in general. I'm going to open up this first predub here. This is where I typically just stick all my airs, room tones, or moody ambiances, or stuff like that that's just sort of airy. I'm going to start here. Okay, so I'm going to open SoundQ here by Pro Sound Effects. And we're going to be using this Core 2 Standard bundle. And I'm going to start off a little literal in the beginning, and I'm just going to type in dark ambience. Okay, I already like this. I'm going to slow down the speed a little bit. And by the way, this is a good chance to mention, we're going to be listening to everything in stereo here, folded down. It's a good idea to use headphones or your best possible speakers. There will probably be some low bass tones in here that you probably won't hear out of a phone or your laptop. So if you can, I'd put on the best pair of either headphones or play out of speakers that can play those lower frequencies if they're available to you. Yeah, so I like how that sounds pitched down. So we're going to slap this in. Send it to Pro Tools. So now we've got the clip in here. I'm going to make this video a little bit smaller. We're probably going to start with this tone. And let's just see how... I have a feeling it's going to end up gone by here. But let's just generally shape this in. So I'm just doing I'll do less than a 1 frame fade. Again, I'm in grid mode here, but if you hold down Command, I'm using the Smart tool also. If you hold down Command, it'll allow you to slip, it basically puts you in temporary slip mode. So if I let go of the Command key, then now I'm back in grid mode. But I hold Command, I'll do less than a frame fade there. Okay, so now that we've got this fade in, let's just hear this. Okay, so that generally works. Let's go look for a couple more sounds to build out a couple layers here. Let's see what else is in here. That's pretty fun. That might even make a fun element for this fan here. Maybe slowed down even more. I'm actually going to stick that up in effects. I'm going to pop open this folder with Shift F and then pop open. We'll do the second folder here. Pop that in. All I'm doing, by the way, to do that is I'm using Command Tab to switch between my apps. So I basically all day long I Command Tab back and forth between whatever software I'm using for the library and Pro Tools. And then I'm hitting S, which is a shortcut in SoundQ to send to Pro Tools. So just in case you see me bouncing back and forth a bunch, that's what I'm doing there. So I'm gonna, let's see, bring this to the head. Oh wait, our first shot is the fan here, so I'm actually gonna control click this back to my selection, which will snap the head back there. And then I'm gonna cut it off here. I'm gonna mute. Okay, let's see what this sounds like. Okay, that's pretty fun. Probably don't need it as loud. I'm gonna move this towards the center. Okay, that sounds cool to me. I'm actually going to... I'm gonna extend this back out. Let's keep looking at these other... This is nice because it's got some movement. Sort of cave-like ambience with some rise and falls. I'm going to pitch it down just a little bit as well. Bring this back down here. Send that. We might be able to do like a slower introduction fade onto that guy. And we'll mimic the same fade over here. Okay. You guys should check out, by the way, I'm going to be doing a lot of sort of shortcut editing in here. Definitely check out the shortcut editing tutorial video that I did also from Pro Sound Effects in their videos on YouTube. Definitely go check that out. You'll get to see a lot of these shortcuts sort of in action in this video, but I'll describe them better over in that video, so go check that out. Okay, so that's actually already starting to establish sort of a mood, like a dark tone. Okay, and as we go back to this shot, I'm actually going to copy this down. I'm going to use this front section again, but I'm going to open up pitch and time. You can use any, you know, plugin that will affect pitch and time to do this sort of thing. This is just my preferred one. I'm gonna slow it down even more and pitch it down even more because this next shot of the fan from this like lower Dutch angle looking up at it is slowed down even more. I like that because we'll basically fade out of that pretty soon after that shot. But it gives a nice moodiness to the scene, and then we're probably going to do some sort of an impact boom when we see her for the first time. So let's actually just do that. I'm going to do that. I usually put that sort of stuff down in the lower predubs. So I'm going to do that here on predub 4 S1. So let's just go for like bass impact and see what we find here. Let's see, I want some, these are all metal binaural impacts. I wonder if I slow that way down. That might be nice for sort of the upper end, especially. One thing you do have to keep in mind when you're cutting in this sort of stuff is that people may not always have speakers that can play really low bass tones and frequencies. So I do try to incorporate sort of mid-rangey, higher elements for people that are listening on phones or, you know, what have you. I'm gonna raise the magnification. Hey, that was really cool. Oops. I really like that. The stuff from Sonomar is really great. I'm going to cut that in. So all I'm doing beforehand there, when you see me go back and forth, I'm just command on doing that, is I'll click at the frame that I know that I want to spot the piece in from. Command tab, hit S, and that's that little sequence. It's just muscle memory for me, so it's just quick. See how this sounds. Okay, I'm gonna pop open option numeric 6 pops open your clip effects window. I'm actually gonna give that a little bit more beef in the low end. I really want to feel that. Okay, so what I'll probably do is I've got a Pro Tools dock here. I'm going to use the fader on. I'm going to ride down the level a little bit leading up to this shot of the first shot of the girl. Okay, great. And so what that did there, what I was essentially doing, if I expand this VCA to see this, I'm riding the level down to basically make room for this boom to come through here. Just clearing some space for it. Because these ambiences start out pretty present. In fact, I'm probably going to knock them back a little bit, a couple dB. Let's see here. Look for one more, like a real low end. Okay, I love this colossal library. I am going to type in colossal and let's look at impacts. I want it to just be, let's just do colossal bass. I don't want a whole lot of crunchy high-end information. Okay, I like this kind of like womp here. Cut that in. I'm probably gonna knock off some of the high end, so it's more of just the low tone. See how this works. Bring that down. So I kind of want this guy down here to be the most prevalent. Okay, so let's just look at this one more time. I think what I'll do is I'll go back here to the beginning and let's do like 1 or 2 more elements for this fan and then we'll move on. I don't want to get too out of order, like moving chronologically. I like to sort of work semi-linearly. Let's look at fan. Those are power downs. I don't necessarily want that. Let's look at... That's speeding up. That's a fun loop right there. Okay, that sounds like it'll probably be close enough in sync to use. I'm going to drag these down so I can layer this guy over top. Extend. Yeah, that works nicely. And I'm gonna center this base information even more. I'm gonna just use my ProTools doc to write that automation in across the length of the selection. And you'll notice I'm not using literal sounds for this fan. It's actually more of an impressionistic design as opposed to a literal one. And then we're gonna be in this ambient room. Might be nice on this shot to establish some kind of like a whistly wind or something. I'm gonna type in wind whistle. See if we can get like an urban wind. I like that because it's subtle enough. Let's try laying that over just a short section. I want it to just sort of come in and then gently go away. And so essentially what I'm doing here, so that you understand my thought process, is I always want to try to build like an ebb and flow of things that are evolving over time. I don't often want to just cut things statically across the entire scene. I want things to come in and out because that's sort of how the real world works, and it also keeps things sounding interesting. So that's why I'm just cutting in a shorter duration for this wind. And I do, when I'm also picking backgrounds, I do like to pick things that have movement and shape in them so that they are dynamic in themselves and they're not just steady, room tones. It wouldn't be as captivating or as immersive without that natural movement. Okay, cool. That's starting to come together. I'm going to put this back up here. I'm going to lower this in volume. Just reduce a bit of that resonance. Focus more on the low end for that shot. Okay, that's starting to work. I'm going to do the same thing up here. I'm going to ride the volume down prior to that cut. So I'll probably let this live a little longer in the head of this shot so we get more of a taste of it, and then have it wind down over here by the time we get to that head or marker. Okay, so now that we have that like that, it creates just a little bit of a moment space here for this to come in. So I'm wondering, I think maybe On these, you could kind of go 50-50 on these little flash shots that happened earlier. Let me play through this. So when I was scrubbing through, I actually missed one of these. So there's these two flash shots. Maybe we do something subtle for them. I kind of like just this tone. This is really cool from the general collection. Real short in and out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to throw up a lot of reverb on this. That's super cool. And then maybe add this little tone here. It's kind of fun. Let's see how this sounds in the context. I may even make them more subtle. I like how soft the first one is. I'm gonna soften the head of this one here. That's better. Probably make the second one even more subtle. But more reverb on the second one. So I'm gonna copy that over. Command C to copy, Command Option V or paste to do paste to selection. So if I highlight just a small section here, if I were to just do a regular paste, it'll just do that length. But I can highlight a longer selection and do Option Command Paste, and it'll fill the selection with that same automation. That's cool. Okay, let's... I still want more low end on that. Could just be the headphones I'm working out of too. Let's look on here. We could use more. I really want that feeling of dread to kind of linger. That's helpful. Okay, and then so actually what I'm going to do right here, I'm going to move this fade back because what I want to do for this little section here is I want to completely come out of our established room tone until we're back with her. And then have this be the start of the fade out. Because for this little section I want it to feel really contrasty and scary. So now let's see how we should make... I'm going to open up this third predub here to create this stuff. I think let's look up knife. Let's do knife shing. Believe it or not, shing is the word I usually use for that, and I think a lot of library people do too, obviously. You can see a bunch here. Okay, so that's a nice recording. We're not going to... I know it sounds really literal, but bear with me for a second. So for something designy like this, what I'll typically do is I'll duplicate the mono file right above itself and then drag it down onto a stereo track so I can do stereo processing to it. I think I'm going to do something here where I'm going to play around with some plugins to create some new sound out of the existing stuff. So I'm going to go to SoundToys Crystallizer. see what we come up with. Okay, let's see. So part of this horror genre and doing sound design for it is a lot of it is just about experimenting. I'm going to open up some verb. There's not really a right or wrong approach here to how you do this sound design portion of it. It's just kind of about learning the plugins that you have, understanding what some of the possibilities for them are, and then trying to think of some things that might be outside of the box a little bit. Okay. Let's do bubble for the blood. Oh, come on. Okay, so I'm slowing this way down. As you can tell, I'm a fan of doing pitch and speed manipulation. Part of the reason for that is you can take existing sounds of, you know, natural sort of recordings and very quickly morph them into otherworldly, more designy sound just by speeding them down. Okay, so I'm going to do something here that even though this is a... So at the moment, this water sound is pretty cool on its own, honestly. I mean, there's not anything like super like, you know, this sounds like we're maybe going underwater or something. And this is just like a surface level pour. But I'm going to use the idea of this, you know, the liquid is sort of a jumping off point, just like metaphorically, to get us to a designy place, I should say. So I'm going to do a trick that I like. I'm going to do RX Connect. I'm going to send this clip. I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to use this deconstruct tool. What you can see, I obviously use it a lot, but I'm going to reduce the noise content of this clip and leave in the tonal content, and you'll see what it does. So here's the clip one more time. And what we're going to do is remove a lot of noise content and keep tonal content. Right? So here's the before. So you get these really cool little tonal, kind of chirpy, otherworldly sounds. So I'm going to send that back and render it. Didn't need to render that whole length, but that's okay. Put on Pro R again. We're going to give this some verb as well. Suddenly we've got like a really fun little texture, kind of creepy element to just sort of touch on the idea of the liquid blood. You know, it's not a super literal design where I'm like trying to actually cover what this would really sound like if we were pouring, you know, this liquid into this jar or whatever this surface is. Instead, I want to try to approach personally a lot of this sort of genre horror stuff from a more metaphorical point of view. You know, and obviously I made some literal choices here in the beginning. We chose a knife and then a liquid, but I'm treating them in ways that sort of bends them out of reality with just being normal recordings. I may even, I want these sort of gloom gloom things to hit earlier. So they're here. So I may actually split up this file and do this, because I like the low end there. I'm going to solo this predub. Okay, that's fun. So I'm going to go back to SoundQ and let's find another bass. Let's actually do, let's just look at stingers, some pre-designed ones. Some metal impact. Actually, so these anvil hit things, I like this one here with the long ring out tail, because that can be, again, this is mono, so I'm gonna just duplicate it down. I hold Option and dragging, that'll duplicate the clip. Then take these together. I'm gonna hold Control so that when I move them up and down, they don't slide left or right. They stay perfectly in sync together. Put fades on because I put fades on everything. Stop any popping. Sorry, turn down the file a bit. That ring out. Actually, I'm gonna process that a little differently. I kind of want and I also want to do a higher mix percentage. Okay, that's a little more designy sounding now. I won't go into a ton of the specifics of this plugin, but check it out. FabFilter Pro R is one of my favorite reverbs to design with, because it's, as you can probably see as I was going through it, it's just really fast to manipulate the parameters here. This is an EQ curve down here, and this is like the actual time reduction. So the more that you're, the decay percentage, I should say. So like if you make this larger, it'll have a longer decay wherever you've boosted within a certain frequency range. So if you wanted something to decay, a certain part of the frequency spectrum to decay faster or slower, you can manipulate that up here. But I'm actually not interested so much in the actual impact so much as the actual ringing. So I'm going to do this. Okay, and so what that does is it plays on this metal knife thing that I'm kind of losing in the mix. I'm going to turn it up a bit. And then I'm going to do on this fourth predub down here one more like bass impact stinger. There we go. That's sort of what I was looking for. Make sure the transients are lined up. I'm actually gonna, I have a shortcut set up to take off the names of the clips, just helps me see better. I just did that through a custom keyboard shortcut that I set up because it's always something. I like to work in smaller track views, so the names sometimes obscure the waveforms. So I like to be able to toggle those on and off. Oh, wrong thing I was putting the stinger there for. Okay, cool. So we're having like kind of a cool drop out of the ambience here, and we're stinging this moment a little bit. Turn this up actually. Wholesale. One thing I'm missing, I talk a lot about tension and release. I feel like we're not building up enough tension yet. So I'm going to address that in a couple ways. Okay, sorry. So I know that my webcam was frozen there for a while, but that's actually probably for the best. You don't have to sit there and stare at me talk. So, yeah, so I want to create a build here. And a simple way to do that might actually be... hit this reverse button here. I actually really like that in reverse. So I'm gonna... I actually don't know if it'll print in reverse when I send it. That's super cool. It'll actually send in reverse, so that is fantastic. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have that lead up to our first cut here, and actually, just to keep in good practice, I'm gonna move this down to another predub, because as a mixer, I would wanna have control over this hit versus this rise. I wouldn't want them glued together, so I'm gonna do this on its own predub. Okay, that's gonna create some of that tension rise there for us. I'm debating, let's see. Let's go to X for Records. They've got a great tool called LFO tool. I'm gonna apply, this is a preset I've already got set up where it defaults to a sine wave, and I'm just setting the hertz to what I want. Maybe what we do is we start with the normal rise, and then we actually fade into the LFO rise here. Let's see how this sounds together. I'm gonna solo this predub so we can hear just these elements. That's pretty fun. Now let's see. Because right now, so these elements up here are just sort of washing over. They're not really staccato the way the cuts are. And I think I'm going to create something down here to emphasize those little hits. So we get something more rhythmic out of it. Okay, let's do, I'm going to type in screen. Do we want this now or later? Let's just try it now. Those are fun. So this dry ice, I'm going to cut up into little, like little staccato things. I'm going to have it hit just on the black. I'll make this fade really short. That's extremely short, but very short. Oops. I didn't, I meant to hit Command E there. I just hit regular E, so it zoomed in. Command E will be your shortcut. I use that like a million, it's just muscle memory. Command E creates a cut wherever your cursor is. And one more time we cut to black. So little mini fade there. So on their own. So that's just gonna help punctuate those in between moments. See how that sounds. I may need kind of like the idea actually of putting in something that's a little creaturey sounding in here and alternating that with, let's just try this. You know, that's, I mean, I think I've said this already, but again, like this horror stuff, there isn't a rule book really. I mean, there's certainly tropes that people have explored over and over again with horror, but a lot of it is just experimentation and just trying new things. A lot of times it helps me to think about things that are metaphorically related, like I did earlier. You know, it's like I'll type in a knife and I'll type in, you know, liquid or blood or gore or what have you. But then finding out interesting ways to design that stuff is that's gonna be what helps you to differentiate and sort of stick out from the crowd in terms of bringing something unique to the table. Is that you're not just grabbing library assets and plugging them in and, you know, saying, okay, I'm done. Like I cut in what was supposed to be there. It's really about sort of crafting a scene together. And that's what most of us take pride in. And so, you know, here I'm just messing around with the idea of something that's rhythmic, as opposed to up here was more about like tonality and feel. And so because these are like really staccato shots, just meaning, you know, like short transient events. That's a musical term. And like I said earlier too, you know, you can approach this from a musical point of view. I'm going to see what this sounds like now. Okay, so that, I mean, I could spend hours and hours and do many versions of this, but let's see how it sounds all in context. It's not perfect, but it's starting to get something more interesting across than just the stuff we had before. I'm gonna type in death scream here. I'm gonna add death. Death metal. Let's see if there's male. Let's see, because we've got a woman in frame, let's see if there's a female. Let's just do female scream. That's much more tonal. That's super cool. This is from the Richard King collection, which I'm personally a big fan of. This, I feel like, is going to do what I wanted to do with this stuff here. I'm going to divide this up so I can just quickly match these cuts. Oops, I'm going to have to adjust my fade. Let's go to like 10 milliseconds on either side. It's still long, but that's okay. This is where your editing shortcuts come in handy. Like I'm going slow, obviously, because I'm talking through this stuff for the sake of the tutorial, but knowing your shortcuts will help you to be able to iterate many, many times faster. I'll pull those down further. Didn't necessarily turn out exactly how I wanted, but it's close enough. It's starting to at least shape. And I think that bass hit actually needs to come here so that we land on the shot of her and punctuate the fact that we're now right up close with her. Yeah. That feels like it's got some tension to it now. Okay, let's reevaluate. Sometimes it helps to put ourselves in context and just watch back from the beginning, and it's a short clip, so let's just start from the beginning again. Those things starting out, I mean, obviously, you know, if we had more of a run up to the scene, it would be helpful. I'm probably going to just fade them in, though. So we can kind of, you know, just have a nice intro as opposed to just slamming as if we're starting in the middle of something. Okay, so here is one thing I'm definitely going to do is we're missing a little bit of rhythm and momentum here in the beginning, so I'm going to cut in a couple little, let's do like dark whoosh, some little transitional sounds here. Okay, so this will work. I'm gonna slow these way down. I want these to be fairly dark in tone, I mean. And what I want them to do is essentially to help carry us over these cuts so that we're not just looking at, you know, boring establishing shots. Even though the shots are giving us information about the environment we're in, they're fairly static unto themselves. So as you can tell, I use a lot of this. This is going to Pro R also. This is my big abstract reverb. It really helps for these sort of like non-diegetic elements. Okay, and I think I want a version of that an octave lower. Okay, that's definitely cooler. And then maybe we do like a much quieter transition over. I'm even going to... there's a bunch of plugins you can use to add bass to content. One of my favorites is this one called Lowender. It's actually got a very specific sound to it, so it's not always appropriate for everything, but I think in this case it'll work. It's very heavy-handed right out of the gate, so use it with discretion. I think that's really cool. That'll help pull us over that cut. Okay, I'm gonna do something here too, where I'm gonna do glass debris. Turn this down. Oh, that's actually... So that's really nice tonality. I like the tonal texture. I don't want glass that's just noisy because I want to create an abstract element out of it again. So I like how tonal and musical that sounds. Okay, and that's a little dry on its own. So I'm going to process this again. I think... For this one, I'm going to try using this plugin called Wormhole by Synaptic. And now is probably a good point to just bring up again, for those of you, who are watching this, for those of you who may be a little bit plugin obsessed, I mean, clearly, as you can see from my list, I love plugins. I have no shortage of them. In fact, I have probably too many. But plugins are just tools to help you get to where you're going. The whole point that I want everybody to take away from this isn't the fact that every sound needs to be processed and, run through some crazy secret formula. A lot of it's just about experimenting, but it's more about the care that you take to shape a scene more than it is about the specific plugins that you're using to achieve. Because, I mean, I guarantee you could put the exact same set of plugins on multiple computers and give them to different designers, and you'd wind up with extremely different results from each one. And they may all be good and they may all be valid and artistic in their own way. My point is just that the plugins are a tool and they are not what gets you to the end result. So don't worry if you're like, watching this and you're like, oh, I don't have a lot of that stuff. I'm just playing with the tools that I have and that I know how to use. So, go out there and start to collect your own tools and put things together and have them in your bag to be able to use. But just don't get caught up in the idea that you have to own, certain plugins from different companies or whatever, just because you saw one person use this or that. So I just wanted to go ahead and plug that in as a piece of advice for those who may be watching. Okay. Unfortunately, I think there it's actually working against us that the twinkles sound like they're in a major key. Let's grab this again, another good piece of audio from the Richard King library. I think I'm actually going to try... Not every idea works, by the way, as you can see. There's plenty of times when I'll spend time experimenting and nothing necessarily comes of it, and that's okay. I mean that is the idea behind experimenting, right? I'm basically widening out the waveform here. Actually, and by the way, how I do that is Shift Option. If you, I'm using a Magic Mouse, and so if I like swipe my finger left or right as if I'm scrolling horizontally, you know, if you hold Shift and Option, you can raise and lower the height of your waveform, which does not affect volume. It's just the display of the waveform itself. I do that to make sure that like I can see where the tail of a clip ends, make sure I'm not cutting off any sound if the clip were like truncated here, for example. So I think I'm going to use just tail of this, and I may even try, I think I'm going to reverse this just for fun. And you can tell like it started with a sort of a sharp transient, and I put a fade over it to lessen that, and then I reversed it and it still came up to a peak, and I'm lessening that, so I'm sort of creating like a smoother arc through volume shaping, you know, just manipulating the sound basically. Okay, so that's kind of a cool idea. It's not totally shaped, but let's maybe just add some verb. I might just do this. And then I'll tell you what, I'm going to reverse this one more time. Oh, it's already open. I'm going to option numeric 6 to close my clip effects window again. It's taking up space. Have this real low so that it just kind of decays out. Okay, so I'm probably going to make the glass a little more subtle in the mix, but I think that we're finally starting to get some momentum and some shape into this early scene. Okay, that's starting to take shape. If I had, you know, a ton of time, I'd probably work more on the shape of here, but I think you guys are at least getting the point. Hopefully about like building rhythm and tension release. So in the beginning here, it's a lot about creating movement over these shots and getting us over the cuts. And then I like the little tonal strikes we did here. I think the next big thing to address is her moving forward. So I'm going to go down to the footstep section here. And let's see, here's the first shot. her foot is actually coming down there. I'm gonna put a marker on each of these feet. I did this, if you watched the editing and sync video that I did, you'll know this is just a preference of mine to work this way. Okay, so that next footstep's gonna be right on that cut. So there's only a couple feet here because we're moving in slow-mo. I'm gonna assume there's one on the cut, then one there, then one there, and then over this cut we won't have one. So I'm gonna grab, let's do foot. Let's just do footstep. Okay, I'm gonna slow this way down. Okay, so these don't sound like what I want them to sound like yet, but again, we're gonna do some design and manipulation on these. I want dark, sort of cushiony footsteps to start. I'm gonna go to each transient. Oops, I missed one there. Here's the first one. Okay. I've got these lined up now. Okay, so they still sound a little like they've got some boot, like that transient. So I'm going to soften the transient by placing fades over them. And then drop down my clip effects window again. Add some bass. I may even, I think I'll add some low end to these, make them bassy. That's cool. You can see, like I said, this plugin is pretty heavy-handed out of the gate. You can see how huge those transients are. But it sounds good. Oops, no verb on that one. Okay. Let's get the rhythm of these right. That one's probably a little late. Okay, so the feet are really just going to be there as a background texture because we're going to need to build another rise to get into this moment right here, which is our big, scary finale. And those feet would have been more appropriate, I think, but that's okay. In fact, those are better feet. I'm going to cut those in. Oops. If at first you cut something in and then you find something better, it's always a good idea to just go ahead and cut in the sound that you like the most, even if you've already done the work for something else, because at the end of the day, we just want our product to be as good as it can be. And I found these feet and I liked them, and so I'm gonna use them. Okay, so let's do like half the amount of verb on these. Yeah. It's nice because it gives us that top end of the like bare feet, you know? I'm gonna pull these guys down because we'll still use the bass from these. In fact, I could probably roll off a lot of the top and just use the bass that we generated. Pull down these second two a little bit and then these overall. Okay, so I'm gonna type in bass string. Okay, I like this like tonal. I really try to go for tonal sounding elements. Again, this is going to be something you'll have to figure out if there's a composer on the project, like what sort of stuff he's doing. But in general, I'm a fan of really tonal stuff for horror tension because it just sounds interesting. So there's that. Let's do metal, let's do string rub. I actually kind of really like that metal creaking for this back here. I'm just going to lay that under this, just since I found it, and why not? Center it up a bit. And add some verb, of course. Probably just limit it to mostly this shot. Okay. Back to this idea. So building tension for this walking scene. I want to do like, let's do metal ronk. Almost like a, hey, that's great jump scare material right there. This is absolutely going to live in this section here. I'm going to go ahead and place that down. I'm going to do some of the rhythmic staccato stuff we were doing earlier. This is the sort of thing where, like, you know, I was obviously trying to build up something different here, but, you know, this sound is so good, I'm not going to, like, let that pass me by without cutting it in. Because this is great. Let's put this up here. Where's 4? Here we go. That sounds really cool. Thank you, Richard King. Okay, this is the sort of stuff I was looking for. I like really tonal metallic stuff for warping, turning into big, long. I'm actually going to use, SoundToys has a plate verb that has like an infinity setting on it. Actually, I'm going to duplicate this down first. So what that does is it literally will just essentially it acts like a freeze where it'll just give you the tone forever. I'm gonna want this to really come to a head, so I'm actually gonna do like a pretty intense fade up on it because I want it to get to a peak in volume. Yeah, that's gonna be fun. I'm going to pitch this down by an octave. And so what that's going to do is it's going to create like a cool harmony. When I pitch this down by an octave and then do like the regular, the Pro R that I use all the time. Okay, so here's that. Love that. Okay, that works. I think these two together. I can even emphasize the tail just by clip gaining it up like this. Putting a fade at the beginning. Okay, I actually, believe it or not, even after the whole thing with putting in the feet, they may actually just be hurting us, the high end. So I actually think I'm going to roll off the high end on these feet. We turn them down. That's actually better. That's better. I like just having the texture of the feet. Okay, let's go to Colossal again. I think these guys will have a lot of good material. That's cool. Just lump this all together in here a little bit. This is like the final stinger for here, the final bass hit. We're gonna bring that all the way down so that we don't get as much of the like flame sound in there. A lot of these sounds are really incredible. I'm just looking for stuff that's gonna fit sort of our palette that we've got going. That's gonna be a nice, that'll take us into cool. I like that. It's loud and bassy and full. So yeah, the Richard King thing is really carrying a lot of it, this stretched cable. Let's bring back our goopy sound from before. Where was that? Okay, so that stuff up here is pretty much getting lost. So I'm gonna, it just takes a lot of experimenting. Let me do pour liquid. Let's do, actually, let's see if we can, okay, well, let's start with a pour liquid. See, I don't want a glass sound. Let's grab some of this. Okay, I'm up on the third one, that's fine. This is, I'll probably leave this in mono. I didn't pre-plan any of these sounds that I was going to choose. And that's okay. Because I think it's fun to just see the process. Or at least that's what I would have, when I was starting out, I would have loved to just see how people sort of go through their libraries and select their sounds. Okay, that's got like a nice liquid tone to it. And then I want to do, let's look for slime or gore. That's excellent. Love that little like creature-y sounding squelch. Throw some verb on that. Super cool. That's actually awesome to have that sort of squelchy thing as our sort of main element there. So let's see, we've got the knife cut. I'm gonna move this up here. Got the knife cut on this guy. I want to do something to emphasize the head of this first image of this mummy. Dumpster hits are always a fun way to find stinger material. That's fun. I like the tonal ronk. So not every edit has to be a hit or an impact. Like using tonal stuff to shape can really help too. And it also helps to cut through the mix. Because if there's music going here, you're going to want stuff that's not just noisy. You're going to want stuff that has shape to it. So like, I can even turn this down because it does cut through really well. I'm going to extend the tail. And we're just missing a couple of the beats here. So let's do like, I think I'm going to cut that short there so it doesn't ring out. And then we can have our next, let's do another woman scream. That's fantastic scream there. I'm gonna move this up to a higher predub just since it's kind of in a different category of its own sound-wise. Do keep in mind what I talked about in the session. I know I've been plugging all the other videos, but they're all kind of relevant. They're all kind of coming together here, actually. Stuff like session organization and these editing shortcuts. Like, hopefully these tutorials all sort of lead to, you all being able to actually go through and edit this stuff. Like professional sound designers. Okay, so that's a little pokey and harsh. Stop it from hurting. Okay, and there is one, that gives me an idea. I'm gonna duplicate this, string it down. I'm actually gonna remove the clip effect. Do a long tail out. I already pretty much know what it's gonna sound like. And then I'm going to reverse this. That's gonna be our final out. I'm gonna pitch this one down. I'm gonna do clip by clip so I maintain my fades. It's a trick, by the way. If you go to create individual files and then clip by clip, and then I hit render, you see how it doesn't get rid of my fades here? So let me put my name back on. So if I zoom in on the file name and now I render this, it says PTN Pro, but it has maintained my fades. I like that sometimes, depending on how much information I want to preserve down the line. And I'm going to make a riser out of that scream, but the pitched up version. And that'll be kind of what takes us out. Oops, got some rogue automation that made its way there. Probably from the other clip. Go like that. See what this sounds like now. That is pretty fun. I think I want like one last element in here to get some of those last cuts, but the question is, which element do I want? Let's go to Richard King again, because he hasn't let me down yet. And let's just see what's here. Ah, yes, the heartbeat. A cliche trope of the horror genre, of which I am guilty myself, by the way. That's not a knock on anybody who's ever cut a heartbeat into anything. I'm pretty sure we've all done it. If you've ever worked on anything remotely tense. But it's something I typically, it's not my first choice just because it's been done a lot. You know, that actually might be good for the blood drop. Yeah, that's going to feel nice in the context of the whole mix. We're almost there. We're almost there. Sometimes the stuff works, sometimes not so much. Let's do metal impact. Not quite like those. Let's do a jail door. I like that. Rock is just with an R. I think this is going to be perfect, and this will probably do it for, you know, for the purposes of this video. Super fun. Let's actually, I'm gonna move this up to here with the other like sort of like elements, the sort of tonal riser stuff, and then I'm gonna lower this by an octave, and then I'm going to one more time add our low end. This is going to be great. one last element I actually want to put in here. I lied. Let's do wind gust. What I want is I want to find something that's sort of pink noisy. Actually, that's actually really cool. This is from Cinematic Winds and Krober and Alan Splett. Really amazing recordings. Anne's libraries are just always phenomenal. I'm such a fan. So what I'm going to do here, there's two things. So number one, I'm going to duplicate this, and actually I'm going to do the automation first because I want to automate the take the automation down with it. So I'm going to start doing this. I just really want to pump the low end information there. I'm going to hold down this higher information a little bit because it gets a little piercing. Like, not reduce that quite as much. Again, I'm control command clicking this automation, this parameter to bring up this automation lane. Doesn't work in every plugin, but it does in the good ones. And then I'm going to go to FabFilter again, but Saturn this time. I really want to add a lot of distortion to this, so. Okay, so what I'm doing there is I was just creating sort of zones to control, to sort of do like a sort of like a multi-band type compression treatment to it. Really just shaping the frequency spectrum there quickly. Low ender one more time. Yeah, this is going to be rad when it's finished. So what I'm going to do is start off with a clean tone, and then as it gets closer and closer to the end, it morphs into this distorted tone, and I think it's going to be cool. We shall see. Oh, that didn't quite go as planned. Something funky happened there, but try it again. Something's happening that's keeping. So actually, I know what the problem is. My bad. So I'm adding way too much low end, and this filter isn't really helping us as much. Cut off that little snap at the end there. It's because that's why we put fades on everything. Cool. I think that's working. Let's just watch the whole scene now. I'm going to make this real large. Okay, all right, that's actually not turning out so bad. I'm gonna go back out into our full screen mode here. I think overall the scene was successful for a variety of reasons in the end. One of the things that I can't really stress enough that's super important is that it helps to have really high quality materials to work with. It would be like the equivalent of a painter who's a master, let's say a masterate portrait painter, like going and buying cheap kids paints. It's like, you know, obviously the master painter is going to be able to do more with kid paint than somebody who's not as skilled at painting. But if you give that master painter really high quality materials to work with, high quality brushes and high quality paints, he's going to be able to do a better job, right? So part of that is ensuring that, you know, the source material that you're cutting from is incredible. And that really helps when you've got, you know, libraries like the one here at, you know, the Core 2 Standard Edition. Is there's so much material. It's a general library. So as you were able to see as I was going through cutting, I could type in all kinds of different things that I wasn't even sure if would be available or not. And more often than not, that material was there because this just is such an expansive library. So definitely go and give the core bundles a look at Pro Sound Effects. They're super helpful. I love working with them. Thank you again to Film Supply for allowing us to cut together the clips to make this work for the tutorial. Please go and check them out. Again, links are in the description for both the libraries from Pro Sound Effects and the Film Supply online library. Be sure to check both of them out, and be sure to subscribe to Pro Sound Effects, leave us a like and a comment. Let us know if there's types of subject matters that you would like for us to continue to cover over time. We'll try to do as many of them as possible. And I hope these videos have been helpful to any of you. Please be sure to reach out to me if you have any questions. I always do my best to get back. And thanks again for watching.